to be here to address this group, but I've got to begin with an admonition and also a challenge to you. I had the privilege of speaking a couple of years ago with Bill Ouchi, William Ouchi, author of Theory Z, the M-Form Society. We were on the same podium together, and he related a story to the audience at that time. A few winters ago, he had the opportunity to address a U.S. trade association. Now, that trade association was comprised of 200 to 300 different companies, large ones, small ones, OEs, suppliers, wide distribution of companies. The meeting, because it was in the winter time, predictably was held in a nice climate. It happened to be in a country club outside of Miami. And their trade association meeting was 3 days in length. And Bill was asked to speak the morning of the first day. And in the afternoon of the first day, they had golf scheduled for the attendees. In the morning of the second day, they had another speaker speak the whole morning. And in the afternoon, they had tennis scheduled. And in the morning of the third day, they again had another speaker and discussions, and in the afternoon, they had deep-sea fishing scheduled. And Ouchi got up to that group, this diverse group, American Trade Association, and he said, you know, I've got nothing against golf or tennis or fishing. He didn't doubt the camaraderie and the deals and the networking, I guess you would say, that could take place on the athletic field. But he said, I want you, as you tee up this afternoon, I want you to think about something. He, Ouchi, a few months previous, had a chance to talk to their direct competitors in Japan. Again, 200 to 300 companies, large and small, suppliers and OEs. Their trade association meetings started at 8 in the morning, and they went to 7 at night, 5 days a week for 3 months straight. So that they, as this diverse group of companies and people, could duke out their differences, and there were differences. It's not as homogeneous as you may think. So that they could begin to cooperate, so that they could approach their government with one voice, not 200 to 300 separate voices all trying to get to the trough at the same time, saying me first, so that they as an industry could approach their government with one voice, so that they, with government and private industry and academia, could proceed to focus the necessary resources that were needed to command a specific market segment, a specific business opportunity. And Ouchi said to the group in Miami, you know, who do you think is going to be ahead in 5 years? If you honestly answer that question, it's not going to be the folks playing golf in Miami. Now, it's not that I think that what's crucial here is that one must recognize that the opportunities in this world, economic or otherwise, require the dedication of resources that is far beyond any one person could dedicate, far beyond any one department, any one company, any one sector, and perhaps any one country can bring to bear in this new economic age. In order to compete, I hear a lot of talk nowadays about competition out of Washington. In order to compete, you've first got to learn to cooperate. So it's a pleasure to see a diverse group who I would hope is here to learn how to cooperate, because Erie as a community cannot hope to compete until you learn to cooperate with one another. Now, Dr. Deming has said that if you follow his philosophy, that you're going to be working smarter, not necessarily harder. I think that we in America are in a period of transition. And during that period of transition, we're going to have to do perhaps a lot of both, working smarter and harder. But harder alone, putting your nose to the grindstone, isn't necessarily going to get us anywhere. Ford Motor Company, as Lou had mentioned, although he didn't mention the time frame, about 6 years ago, Ford Motor Company executives heard about or first recognized the worth of Dr. W. Edwards Deming, a person I've had the privilege of knowing and learning from for the past 15 years or so. As you may recall, Don Peterson mentioned a mission, the company's mission, values, and guiding principles. And I think as businessmen, it'd be very good for me to spend just a few minutes. Actually, it's not just a few minutes. I'm going to spend the rest of my time really going through those for you and highlighting, because I think it's extremely important, the concept and the reality in this business day and age anyway of the need for continuous improvement. That's something that I think is lost on a number of business managers today. And I'll dwell a little bit on some of the business systems that we put in place. There obviously is so much to talk about in the area of managing enterprise, and we only have a very little time, so I'm going to skim through some highlights. Mr. Peterson mentioned the mission and the fact that it took 1.5 years to get through the company, to staff it, if you will, to make sure that everything was really the direction that top management and virtually the company, the vision of what we wanted the company to be. I think the unfortunate aspect of many top managers in organizations is that they feel that once they have said the vision or stated a vision, that they just leave it there. They assume everyone can read equally well, and of course we all know what we meant, and that should be sufficient, and we're off doing other things. Well, our management recognized the need to not only state a vision, but also begin to try to expand really what they meant by it. First of all, by living it, and secondly, by amplifying it at every opportunity. And the immediate opportunity after stating the mission would be through our guiding principles, our 6 guiding principles, which really are based on Dr. Deming's 14 points. Before I talk any further, how many of you are, I guess, first of all, have heard of Dr. Deming before tonight? Oh, okay. About half. I don't know what to do with that information, but I thought I would ask. It's not going to change my talk in one iota, but there's a wide distribution of people. This is some of you are going to be happy, and perhaps some aren't not going to know what I'm talking about. The first guiding principle, and again, they're in no particular order. I put them in this order because I think this order is fairly logical, and that is that any business or organization has to start with the customer. Customers are the focus of everything we do. Internal customers as well as external customers. Obviously, when someone thinks of customers, we think of the person that we give our ultimate product or service to. And I'll get into that in a bit. The weakest link in American business has been our link with the customer and our obsession with the competition. Now, this particular thing in a large company as ours, you've got to appreciate that there are some compromises made. And the last line there says, customers are the focus of everything we do. Our work must be done with our customers in mind, providing better products and services than the competition. Well, the problem, in my opinion, of the auto industry in years past had been that we focused on the competition. Was this decision, how would General Motors do that, or what would Chrysler? Is that competitive? Are they doing it? That was a very easy way of getting something passed, to say, well, GM's doing that. Fine, we'll go ahead and do it. Focusing on the competition. Your focus has to be on the customer. One of the things that the first things the Japanese learned from Dr. Deming after the war was how to do market research. Dr. Deming went over there, first of all, to help survey what was left. The techniques that are used for census are the same that are used and very useful for market research. How to do good market research to find out what it is your customer wants and needs and be able to anticipate them. Focus on the customer, don't focus on the competition. And that had been our problem for a number of years. Quality comes first. To achieve customer satisfaction, the quality of our products and services must be our #1 priority. This, a number of years ago, Phil Caldwell, then our chairman, made an observation that we didn't have the product out there. That, of course, any good manager has to manage a number of things, and you make the appropriate trade-offs depending on who you're talking to. And what he wanted to do, because he recognized the product wasn't out there, he said, well, let's try to focus on something that perhaps would make sense to the customer. What are the customers saying? And they're complaining about quality. So let's see what we can do to focus on quality. And in a few years, there was time to get better product out, and in the meantime, the focus, or the obsession, if you will, with the company, again, there many times there's a difference between intent and actuality, but I assure you the intent of the management for the last 5, 6 years has been on quality, that we're not going to trade off for other business parameters. Now, in order to understand that, as Mr. Peterson said, our old definition of quality revolved around terms that were convenient to us as businessmen. Did it meet specifications? Did it meet engineering drawings? Was it within, were there no adverse variances as far as a budget? Was it within cost? Those are things that are very easily to quantify within our organization. And yet quality, we could have a product that met all of the engineering specifications, and it would not be a quality product because quality is defined by the customer. It's going to be hard to accept for highfalutin engineers and designers or whatever, but quality is defined by the customer, not by you. And you've got to, that then relates back to the first one. It's going to help the rest of the talk if I put up some things for definition purposes. Every one of us, and this will help you better understand quality or what I'm talking about and how to manage for quality. Every one of us manages processes. We can look at a process really as a generic blending of resources, a value adding of resources. And the resources can be looked at as people, materials, methods, machines, and environment. Some processes are people dominant, others are machine dominant, others are material, some are rather amorphous. You can't really tell which contributes the most to the outcome, but every process blends those 5 generic resources, adds value to it, and produces an outcome. Any organization is an interdependent network of customers and suppliers, whether it's the person in accounts receivable getting a report from someone or an invoice from out of the mail. That person is a customer of someone, and also a supplier to another person in another office. Obviously, we have external customers and we have external suppliers, but we need to expand our thoughts on what is a customer and what is a supplier. Every one of you is a customer and a supplier to someone else. Everything we do. The old way that we used to manage processes, again, an old way of thinking, was that the way we would ensure that the product was good was we would make it, and then we would have someone inspect it against certain criteria. Hopefully it had something to do with what we would think the customer would want, but we would inspect it, and we would pass the supposedly good product on to the customer, and perhaps, for economic reasons, we would re-inspect the supposedly bad product to see if we could salvage it, or indeed did we really have to scrap it. So I highlighted a method, the method of mass inspection. Method of mass inspection perpetuated the reality that if you wanted higher quality, it was going to cost you more because you were going to have to spend money to inspect everything. Well, there's a far better way to manage processes. Now, don't just think of outcomes, or don't just think of materials. We've had too overly reliant on mass inspection. It for too long was thought to be the prudent way to protect or to protect your relationship with the customer. And again, a Bill Ouchi story. He made the observation that after World War II, if you look to in the heavy industrial market, or even the medium to light industrial market, it didn't exist in the world because it was leveled by the war, except here in North America. And we very carefully, as businessmen, did a number of things, and by golly, markets expanded, and profits increased, and did all the things that good businessmen are supposed to do. You took an action, and something good happened. Ouchi's observation is that in this veritable monopoly, that you really were learning some superstitions that don't necessarily hold true in this new economic age, in this day and age. And through this superstitious learning, we were able to increase profits and increase markets, and yet you could have used any system, putting in these controls. After the war also, what happened? The industry or management was making a transition from management as a right because you owned the place to management as a science through Drucker. Drucker's books were first published after the war in the late 40s, making it into a science. So you had or pseudoscience, if you will. We had a lot of observations that we thought were reinforced, and yet they really don't apply in this worldwide economic age. They only perhaps produced results when we were only competing with or playing by our own rules. The world doesn't play by our rules. Customer doesn't care how unfair the competition is. The customer is interested in value, and they're going to look out for themselves. Doesn't care about your problems in business. There's a better way to manage a process instead of trying to detect defects, mass inspecting them, and that is by trying to prevent them from happening in the first place. And by preventing them from happening in the first place, instead of a feed-forward system of making it, trying to inspect it, and then sorting, the process of defect prevention really is a pure feedback system. That you're interested in taking the information that you have from the process and from the customer. Now, it's very difficult to see, but there are two feedback loops in that process, customer feedback and process feedback, in hopes of readjusting the people, the materials, the methods, the machines, and the environment so as to preclude further defects. Now, in reality, and this is a cheaper way of doing business, a cheaper way of running a business than trying to make them and then inspect them. But I want to point out that as much as defect prevention is an improvement over defect detection because it costs less, and that adds value in the customer's eyes, it's still not good enough. The best you can do with a defect detection system or a defect prevention system is to get 0 defects. 0 defects. Every one of you would be extremely happy if you had 0 defects. And don't just think of product, think of trying to explain an adverse variance in a budget review to your chief executive officer or chief financial officer. That's a defect, a variance, a difference between planned and actual. We live with specifications in virtually every area of business. Don't just think of engineering specs. A very big difference between a lack of a negative, no complaints, no warranty, no adverse variances, 0 defects, a very big difference between a lack of a negative and a very strong positive. You aren't even in the ball game if you're happy about a lack of a negative. What you want is people bragging about owning your product or service, not just being happy that they're not complaining. It's a very distinct mindset or mind shift from the way we have in the West have been managing our businesses. Every management system in place is focused on being ecstatic over a lack of a negative. We aren't even in the ball game if you're happy about that. There's a better way to proceed, a more cost-effective way to proceed, and that is through continuous improvement. And that's our third guiding principle. We must strive for excellence in everything we do, in our products, their safety, value, our services, human relations, and our profitability and our competitiveness. Again, that word competitiveness comes in. That's okay, though. Continuous improvement. Now, we don't have the time to go into explaining to you how it makes sense to, in fact, do better than the specifications. And I just threw up a very complicated model, going from detection to prevention to continuous improvement. But it includes a plan, do, check, act. Some people call it the Deming wheel, Deming cycle, whatever. It is a model that helps us recognize that doing better than spec can cost less, not more. Many of you, that's not going to make business sense, but I assure you that we indeed are businessmen, and it makes economic sense to do better than the specs if you know how to do it right. And I'm going to leave you with that thought. I'm not going to be able to explain to you why, but you need to understand that. Another guiding principle: employee involvement is our way of life. We are a team. We must treat each other with trust and respect. Extremely important. When you look at Dr. Deming's philosophy, a philosophy that has been internalized by a number of Japanese managers, a number of managers in the West as well, a growing number, and you recognize that some scientific or statistical management methods to some extent have been tried a few decades ago. One of the reasons that they have failed or just have withered away is that management had not really understood what they were dealing with. They had not understood that an infrastructure needs to be created that's very humanistic in nature, and not in order to use the technical tools that are available. Dr. Deming's philosophy recognizes, first of all, that it's inherent in human nature, no matter where you are in the world, every one of us has a right to be able to take pride in his work. Every one of us has that right. Some philosophers have said to feel important. We have systems in place that are preventing us from doing that. And many managers also, when you talk about employee involvement or quality of work life, quality circles, it's an example or a phenomenon of management trying to get it out of their office. They just get it out of my office. We can deal with virtually any kind of problem, love to solve engineering problems, but we can't deal with the problems or opportunities of people. Boy, that's when you really learn how to delegate. We just want to get it out of our office. And yet that is one of the biggest opportunities for improvement in American industry, to be able to openly and honestly work with people as partners. And you need to have the whole organization involved, not only within an organization, but the partnerships outside of those boundaries. And that leads to this next guiding principle, which is dealers and suppliers are our partners. The company must maintain mutually beneficial relationships with dealers, suppliers, and our other business associates. Again, the focus, obviously, when you mention a dealer, it certainly includes Lou Perico and other dealers in our family. It also recognizes that they are customers, internal distributors, if you will. Suppliers, we many times focus on external suppliers. They indeed are important. In North America, approximately 55% of the value of our product comes from our supply base. In Latin America, it's up in 80, 85, sometimes 90%, depending on the country. Europe, it's around 50%. But it obviously varies country to country. The point is that we as a company, as large as we are, 380, 390,000 people worldwide, cannot do it alone without our supply base with us. And so we are making a very large effort to try to work with our supply base. Now, you might think of production suppliers. Our most important supplier really is academia, because they supply our most important resource. They supply our people. And yet we've continually or historically been at odds with academia. They have been the bastion of theoretical purity, and we have been the pragmatic school of hard knocks, if you will. And no one of us recognized until recently that one was a customer and one was a supplier. Absolutely essential that there be close working relationships with your most important supplier. Now, our biggest supplier in North America in terms of money is the healthcare industry. We spend more money. That's the single largest line item in our automobile. You might not know that. It's not steel, not plastic. It's healthcare. So we have to work very closely with them, obviously, in order to reduce costs if we're going to have any chance at all of supplying even better value. Here's an example for those of you who like numbers. First of all, of continuous improvement, and secondly, these are North American automotive operation steel supplier quality performance. You can see in previous years, 81, 82, there was, and the line there is a weighted average of percent defectives, and the individual dots showed that there was wide variability in the American steel industry in their deliverables. Through the years, through working with them, providing resources, bringing them in further in advance, where you can see that the average percent defects is going down, but the most important thing, and the thing that you've got to understand as managers, is you don't manage on the average. You've got to be very concerned about the variability. And you can see that not only the average went down, but the variability went down, such that the American steel industry is becoming more and more responsive to the customer's needs. And last but not least, certainly not least, our guiding principle is integrity is never compromised. The conduct of our company worldwide must be pursued in a manner that is socially responsible and commands respect for its integrity and for its positive contributions to society. Now, you might say, well, that's a motherhood. That's like baseball, apple pie, and Chevrolet, although we won't mention that one. But any large company has got to say that. That's motherhood. In fact, it's turning out to be perhaps our most important guiding principle. I had stated earlier that the fundamental precept of Dr. Deming's philosophy is very humanistic. It comes from the fact that every one of us wants to take pride in our work. You talk to any manager. Of course, I think my people have the highest integrity. Take a look at the systems you've got in place, managers, and they say that you don't trust your people as far as you can throw them. We've got management systems that are beating people down every day in spite of your best intentions, in spite of the fact that you want teamwork, you want to bring out the best in people. That's what you say. You're living with systems that deprive people of their ability to take pride in their work. Now, some of those systems are, a couple of years ago, we met with Mr. Peterson when he was president of the company, and Dr. Deming and I proposed that there were a number of systems that we had seen in industry that really were candidates for some major improvement. Dr. Deming calls them barriers or inhibitors, but we'll take a more positive approach. They're candidates for a lot of improvement. Highest, about equal ranking on those two lists, and not surprisingly, Drucker says there are two common elements in any business, and one is the management of money and the other is the management of people. And son of a gun, if the financial management system wasn't looked on as one of the biggest inhibitors into to business or the operation of business, and the management of people, the evaluation system, the management by objectives, the personnel evaluation system, absolutely the biggest inhibitor you've got for teamwork, and I won't go into that. But those two systems were one of the first two major systems, and they take a long time to change in a large company, one of the first two systems that we went after. We being, I'm saying we for senior management, because one of the things that you've got to recognize is that it's not management I'm behind you all the way, but it's leadership. Follow me. It's easy to say quality is done on the shop floor. Mr. Peterson recognizes that quality starts in the boardroom. And they are improving processes so that others might even have greater chances to improving their processes. I think this particular principle has, because of the visibility, he said that everyone carries it, and Lou challenged me there, and I pulled out my card. I'm clean. This particular principle is very visible. It says, you know, we just did something that absolutely doesn't or is going to compromise my integrity, and we need to keep that visible. It questions every management system that we've got in place. We're willing to unfreeze the system. Just to give you a graphical look, I think that we as managers many times, because of our expertise, we take a look at data, we'll call that data, and we say, by golly, I've seen those three circles before, I know exactly what it is, and they go out and fix it. And you take some more data, and oh, well, I thought I knew what it was. We're gonna do this. Even if they did take a different perspective, the point is there are a number of tools, there are a number of methods available, and each tool that you use, each statistical method, and a lot of managers learn a statistical method or a management technique, and they follow the old Chinese proverb of, if the only tool you have is a hammer, it's surprising how many things start looking like a nail. And they look at this one particular tool and they use it and they say, yep, that's that perspective. I don't need anything else. Every tool, every methodology gives you a different perspective. And any manager through over the years will recognize this. The more tools you use, the more perspectives you gain on what you're trying to manage, the better your ability to meet your customers' needs. You're never going to know what the real world looks like. Don't jump to quick conclusions based on the data. Well, I've seen that problem before. I can handle that. What also happens when you see that problem before is something that we call over-control. A lot of companies, as we enter into this new technological age of microprocessors, pay a lot of money for these microprocessors, and typically they're programmed to adjust on every reading or an average number of readings, in other words, in order to keep parts within specifications. This particular thing, now there's some theory to understand this. I won't go into it. I gave the theory to our folks in Germany, and our pragmatic German plant said, I don't believe it. This is actual data with a tool compensation device turned on. We had just spent, I hate to say, a lot of money on this device, and we ran 50 pieces, and you can see that it essentially did what it was programmed to do. It kept the parts within spec. Under the old way of looking at it, what else could you want? They met specification. By adjusting to every piece. They turned the compensation device off and ran another 50 pieces, and that's what they got. Many times, again, any manager will say, God, I need the newest equipment. You get me the new equipment, and I'll get you the quality you want. I'll be able to meet those objectives or the cycle times or whatever. Just give me the new equipment. You've got to remember that the outcome is a blending of resources, of people, materials, certainly, methods. We change the method here. We change the program. Machines and environment all blend together to contribute to the outcome. You don't have to spend a lot of money to change the way you manage. We now at Ford, because everyone in the industry is going to have these microprocessor-based equipment, and if they're programmed by the manufacturer or by the people who supply them to you, you're going to end up with this previous thing. We're reprogramming ours, and we're going to be able to differentiate the way we manufacture by the way we program, by the methods we use to operate the machinery. Again, some very elementary statistical theory will show you that. It's something that you've got to realize that businessmen in Japan, not super statisticians, not super whizzes at a lot of things, but businessmen just like you have learned some fairly elementary tools and are able to do a number of exciting things. Now, I began with the statement by Ouchi on getting a diverse group together and the recognition for cooperation. Dr. Deming made the observation, or has made the observation, given the perspective of a number of decades now, from his first trips to Japan in the 1940s, he asked the question, what had Japan in 1949, 48? What had Japan except people and good management? If you looked at Japan then and you look at Japan today, there's no natural resources there except people and good management. There's no coal, no iron. Everything has to be imported. In order for them to live, they have to export. They have to add value to inputs. In order for them to survive, they are not self-sufficient. And you can ask yourselves the question, what has the Erie community got but people and good management, good people and good management? You're not self-sufficient by yourself. You have to add value to inputs, and you have to export, whether it's to a different community or to a different state or perhaps to a different country. You have to export in order to survive. What has Erie but good people and good management? In order to compete, you're going to have to learn to cooperate. Thank you. I don't know. I gather there's time for questions, although it's 9:30 and it's been a long day, but I'd be glad to answer any if you got any. Yes, sir.
You touched on it earlier, but specifically, what approach has Ford Motor Company has taken towards its employees to get them to buy into this quality control idea?
I think that you cannot take, the question is what specifically has Ford Motor Company, or what tactic or strategy have we taken to get buy-in of this quality control effort by Ford's employees? I think that if there's any one general strategy, it's that we don't manage on the average. One of the bigger problems that you find in industry is that we don't look at each other as customers. Chief executive officer typically turns to his chief operating officer and says, "You've been here 40 years, 35 years, whatever. You know how to manage. What's the bottom line?" And the bottom line could be quality. It could be a number of things. That person turns around and talks to her exec and says, "You've been here 30 years. You know how to manage. What's the bottom line?" And it goes too far down into the organization, the reality that we're only looking at outcomes. They don't care how you get it, and I don't know how many times we've heard that. That's your problem. You just deliver. And that really is the problem. A lot of, when I speak to senior managers, they say, "By golly, I've got a vision. I know where I want to take this organization, but it's middle management that's muffling this thing up. They're giving me conference room promises and then going out doing what they want to do." And middle management, when you speak to them, they say, "Well, top management should be here. We agree with this stuff." And yet, how do we reach top management? The way you reach either of those constituencies is begin to listen to them as customers. Don't just look at the bottom line, because I can fool, or any of you can fool, people on the bottom line for a couple, 2, 3 years and get it the best way you can, and we'll be, as Dr. Deming says, down the tubes. You have to listen to them and be able to target your approaches to reach every one of our bottom lines, as well as pay attention to the how. How are you going to about getting these results? Now, there's a problem there because each of you in this room, I feel, will, and I did for a while, felt that, good Lord, I'm senior enough, fast-tracked all over the place, I'm senior enough, you just tell me what you want and I'll figure it out. I don't want you messing with me talking about how I'm going to do it. I'll figure it out. You've got to rethink that position, because it's the how, it's the process is the thing. Now for instance, one of the, in order to reach particular people, every one of you in this room, is, whether you're from government or industry, each one of you has a bottom line. It's a takeoff on the Maslowian hierarchy we're all familiar with. And when you graduate out of college or out of high school or however you begin your career, you perhaps have a need for meaningful employment. I know a few decades ago that's what university graduates looked for. They just wanted meaningful experience. Now I guess they want money. They want the cash. In any event, depending on where you are in your career, it might be money, it might be a meaningful experience, it might be power, it could be security, recognition, whatever. Each of you has a bottom line. And if we focus just on money, throwing money at you, that's not going to reach you. If we focus on the average of, well, I'm going to give every one of you a training course, and that's going to try and reach you, that's not going to do it. You have to identify the individual constituencies as customers and be able to tailor an approach that's going to be able to make meaningful sense to them. For instance, top management doesn't learn well in a classroom because of the fear. They're in an authority position. They're not going to ask a question because their people think, especially with their people anyway, because that's how they got there. There's no need for them to ask a question. And your bright, aspiring people aren't going to ask a question because if the boss didn't think it was complicated, I sure as heck ain't going to ask the question, so nothing gets done. So what we've done is we've tutored. I've assigned people to who I consider key vice presidents or general managers within the company. I've given them to them. I've maintained the head count. As if you're in business, you know head count is very important. So I get charged of the head count, and they get the service. Provide a full consulting service, if you will. But they're with that individual to tutor them, to counsel them. You cannot manage on the average, and that's hard. That's difficult to say, being a statistician. But you've got to be able to focus your market. Yes, sir.
You started to promote quality as job one. At what point in the development of your program did you feel confident enough that you could start to talk to the outside world about that and not have your employees or your customers thinking a bunch of crap?
Okay, yeah, the question is, quality is job one. We've in North America, that certainly is very visible. At what point in time do we think or did we think that we were able to publicize that and have our employees not think that it was a bunch of crap? That's the question. I think that when you try to change a culture, I mean, a deep, ingrained culture, and every company is different. I didn't mention in the beginning, but what we're doing makes sense for Ford. You belong to different organizations. What worked in our organization, or sort of worked in our organization, nothing. It's not black and white, too many times. Might not work in yours. So you've got to internalize what some of these theories, some of these approaches. Anytime, though, I can make this general statement, anytime you try a major cultural paradigm shift, if you will, you are going to have a period of incredulity. That is, they're not going to believe you. They take what I call, Father, a Thomasian philosophy. They want to touch it and feel it, and for a while before they're really going to believe that this change is taking place. So what you as managers have to do is recognize that, first of all, there's going to be a distribution. There's a distribution of product, of methods, of buy-in, of enthusiasm, whatever the metric. And you have to understand that there is this distribution. And you have to understand your customers, your internal customers, well enough to know. For instance, in North America, I gave the example on the plane coming down this afternoon, that about 3 years ago, Red Poling, who was our president who's our president now and executive vice president of North America then, made the decision to shut the American system down during vacation. In years past, we would cover regular workers taking vacation by hiring in temporary workers. And anyone knows that makes quality suffer because you don't have the skills, they're not the same people, you're adding variability to the system, the quality suffers. Red said, I'm not going to compromise quality. I'm going to shut the place down, and we're going to forego a lot of money in sales and in profits, hundreds of millions of dollars. And because of our reputation as businessmen, that certainly got our employees, all employees, management, hourly alike, that was a statement, a strong enough statement in North America to say, by golly, it looks like they're serious about this. There were different approaches tried in different locales. It's up to management to be able to understand their customer base, their internal customer base, enough to know what kind of a statement is needed to reinforce and continually reinforce the fact that business has changed. A lot of people make it to the top by understanding how to manipulate the system, not in the bad sense, but in the good sense. They have seen an opportunity that they saw was inherently good, and they somehow found a way to get it done in spite of the system. Well, today's management, that's not the legacy you want to leave. You want to be able to change the system so that more people can do that. Other people recognize or feel that they need to do something that's inherently right and go around the system, and they get caught, and they unfortunately aren't here anymore. But it was the exceptions that you were able to get ahead, the risks that you were able to take. You've got to begin to unlock the system. A long answer to your short question, you have to understand that it takes time to reinforce this dramatic change. And sometimes you have to take dramatic actions to reinforce that. One more question. Yes, sir.
In the latest Deming case called the Deming Library, William Dobbs talks about Deming point called huge fear. And he says that 7 other of 14 points address that issue one way or the other. What has Ford done in this area?
The question, or the observation, and then the question is that in the new set of tapes from the Deming Library, and in fact the Deming Library is going to use some of the footage that you saw tonight, Lloyd Dobbins, who is the narrator, stated that one of Dr. Deming's 14 points is reduce fear. And he made the observation that 7 other of Dr. Deming's points really revolve around that, and that's something I've written about in my book as well. That's where he got that. What has Ford, and the question is, what has Ford Motor Company done to reduce fear? I think, I didn't bring a videotape with me, but it was a beautiful example of reducing fear. We have and it's a videotape that we made about 4 years ago that showed the economic benefits of doing better than spec. We had we make a front-wheel drive transaxle transmission in Batavia, Ohio, in our transmission plant there. And we also have that same transaxle made by Mazda, whom we own 25% or so. 4 years ago, that particular transaxle, same design, the Mazda-built transmissions were experiencing dramatically fewer failures than the American-built ones were. They were, which obviously was less warranty, dramatically less warranty, that caught people's eye. They were offered at a unit price that was far lower than the American-built ones were. Again, that's 4 years ago. And we had the plant manager make a videotape explaining this comparison and explaining what he was going to do about it. Well, 5 or 6 years ago, no plant manager in his right mind in Ford Motor Company would have admitted he had a problem, much less make a videotape about it. And it was a very candid videotape that shows opportunities for improvement. And in fact, Batavia, Ohio, has, based on that information, based on that reality, has just become this past month what we call our a Q1 supplier, comparable, and that's our highest quality award for a plant. It's typically given to external suppliers, but we have just recently opened it up to internal plants because what's good for the outside is good for us as well. Same strict standards. I think that Mr. Peterson especially has made it clear that we have got to unfreeze the system. Now don't get me wrong, there is plenty of fear in Ford Motor Company. Now you might say one person's fear is another person's respect, or it depends on your perspective on whether it's fear. Dr. Deming makes the point on the difference between fear and anxiety, and again philosophers will say that no one can grow unless you face anxiety and go beyond it. That's the only way anyone can improve. But fear, we're taking a number of steps. One of them, the videotapes. Others, we're looking at experimenting with anyway, confession. You can't really get I'm not saying these are report cards or whatever, but unless you publicly confess some failures, no one's going to believe that you're not whitewashing or padding your successes. So we're trying to, and we're saying you got to do that. You want to get the next plant manager's job or whatever. Let's be open and honest. How can we be more candid? A long way to go on that, because there are many managers who believe that's their basis of authority. If I can't instill good fear in my people, then I really lost it. Unfortunately, that's some backward thinking, but we have people, certainly, as any organization does, that haven't fully come to grips with the potential for another way of managing. It varies, but I assure you that the commitment at the top of the company is that we want to reduce fear, because you can't even trust your financial system, and that's near and dear to our hearts, if there's fear in the system. You're going to get the numbers that the people think you want. and not necessarily the numbers that you really need if you want the numbers. And it's a vicious circle. We see top managers recognizing that because of the pyramids that have been built up, they're getting filtered and refiltered and whatever information because they've hung too many messengers or shot them. And again, in the company, you don't have to fire anyone anymore. You can dead-end people's careers real fast. You can put them in the quality control department or in training somewhere. They'll get the message real fast. It doesn't. A lot of fear is very implicit and insipid in American industry, and you just got to chip away at it. Okay, that's it.